asked him to come and talk about positivity. And then when we made the shift in our office about how we wanted to organize things, I called him and said, hey, Mark, would it make a difference to you if I asked you to speak on faith? And he said, sure, I'll do it. And I'm grateful for that, because there have been a lot of interesting responses from people when we put faith into the leadership discussion. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. One of the reasons that I'm glad that Mark is here is because he has an extraordinary story. The kind of story that most of us hope we never have. It's a story that has some personal tragedy in it and some personal triumph. Here's an entrepreneur who's been doing good things in the community for a long time, and then life threw him a curveball. And he figured out how to take that and make something really special out of it. So please join me in welcoming Mark Miller as our speaker.
All right, so thanks to Paul and all of the Good Leadership team. We were here early this morning. You guys are always here early. This breakfast is a very inspiring thing, and I'm just honored to be able to get up here and speak today. So you guys might have read Paul's blog here over the last little bit. I'm the founder of the Gunner Project. The Gunner Project was named after my son, who we lost a couple of years ago. Gunner was a very unique individual. Even as a little kid, he was the kind of kid who was always looking out for others. If there was a kid who was in the lunchroom and was eating by himself, Gunner would be the guy to go over there and take his tray and sit down by the kid and try to convince the kid to come and pick up his tray and come move over with his friends. And if he couldn't get the little boy or girl to come and eat with them, Gunner would go back to his table and get his friends to stand up and go and have dinner with, or have breakfast or lunch with the little kid. He always had a huge heart that way and was always kind of looking out for others. And when Gunner was in high school, we noticed some changes with him and kind of what he was doing. And we started to see this whole thing sort of come to a head one day when Gunner left high school, went across the street and did a couple of shots of booze with one of his buddies, came back to the high school and was drunk, obviously, got into a little tussle with the security people there and was actually hauled out of high school in handcuffs in front of his peers and his teachers. They put him in the back of an ambulance and took him down to detox. And we realized that Gunner had a fairly substantial substance abuse issue. And fortunately for us here in Minnesota, we have some great programs here. And we got Gunner lined up at Hazelden, and he started the program at Hazelden. And as part of that program, there's a parent program too. And I have always understood, and I always heard the words that addiction was a disease, right? But I don't think I ever really resonated with that very well. You know, the conversations that I was having with Gunner in my home were things like, you know, Gunner, come and sit around the table here for a second. We need to have a conversation. You know, you need to just stop doing this stuff, right? You're really driving your mom and I crazy. You know, your mom worries about you constantly. You just need to shut it down. You just need to stop. And I realized when I was doing the program, the parent program at Hazelden, that, you know, addiction is like a disease. It's like cancer, right? And if somebody told me that Gunner had cancer, or if Gunner had cancer, I wouldn't sit Gunner down at the table and say, you know, Gunner, this cancer thing, you know, you just need to stop, right? You're driving your mom and I crazy, right? Your mom worries about you all the time. You just need to just stop and put this cancer thing to the side. I mean, that conversation just doesn't make any sense to have the conversation, right? But I was having this conversation in the same way and treating Gunner's addiction, treating the disease that he has in a very similar way, and so the message just wasn't resonating. And I try to get out in front of, when we're doing these Gunner Project presentations in front of these different kids and these different groups, I try to make this message very clear to those kids that, you know, addiction is out there, right? I just read the other day that people think that we're all 1 to 2 degrees of separation away from knowing somebody that has a problem with addiction, right? Whether that's drug use or alcohol use or kind of where that's at. And so I think this message is crazy important. So to kind of continue on with Gunnar, he got some great treatment here at Hazelden. Went on to a fantastic program in Montana called the Wilderness. Went on to Washington and was a part of a program there called the Gray Wolf Ranch, and was just really, really doing well with his battle with his addiction. And he came back to Minnesota. He was 14 months sober, was living in a sober home in St. Paul. And one of his buddies was moving out of the sober home and had a skateboard out there by the curb, and Gunnar jumped on the skateboard and rolled up to this guy's car and grabbed onto the outside mirror and told the kid, take off. And the kid took off, and Gunnar was skateboarding behind the car, beside the car, and the kid didn't take off with any great speed and didn't do any crazy things, but Gunnar lost control of his skateboard, and in the words of the neurologist at the hospital later that day, he said Gunnar had a 1 in a million fall and landed on his head and died instantly. So there we were, devastated. Lost our son, and I, as a grieving father, I felt compelled to do something, right? And so we started a nonprofit. The nonprofit is called the Gunnar Project, and we decided, the support that we got from the community was unbelievable. We got just literally hundreds and hundreds of letters and emails and text messages, and there was a common theme that ran throughout all these messages that said, Gunnar had this really unique ability to make me happy. And so we decided that we would take the focus of the Gunnar Project and make it be on happiness, and specifically with the Gunnar Project, we try to inspire kids to pursue happiness each and every day. Last year in 2016, I was able to get out in front of over 3,000 kids across the upper Midwest. I was on college campuses all over the place, high school campuses, working with youth groups and church groups to kind of deliver this message of happiness. And in preparation for this, I took the year before that, and I found all the information that I could about happiness. I downloaded some big, nasty, boring research papers and kind of just pounded through those. And I read hundreds of books, and I just spent thousands of hours on YouTube and watching videos just to try to get as much information as I could about happiness. And as I did this, I understood that there were a few paradoxes that were out there kind of in existence about happiness. And one of the paradoxes is sort of the 4 sources of happiness. And this isn't going to be any surprise to you at all. The 4 sources of happiness are health. Healthy people are more happy than unhealthy people. It's very obvious. People who are engaged, who are intellectually active, who are creating new things or teaching others, those people are much more happy than people who are bored. Again, fairly obvious. People who are connected with others, be that family, friends, whatever, those people are much more happy than people who are lonely. And people who have faith, who have a higher power, however they want to define that, those people are much more happy than people who go at it alone. And scientific research sort of shows this and studies this. Obviously, the death of my son brought me face to face with my faith. And my faith, I have a Christian faith. And it was an interesting thing. After I got through the initial grief and trauma of my loss, I felt a comfort in Gunnar's death. I felt like he was in a better place. And I really wrestled with that for a long time. I don't have a blind faith, right? I just don't believe in everything. I question every single day. I don't think there's been a day that's gone by that I don't say why, right? That I don't ask why, after Gunnar had been afflicted with this disease of addiction and had battled through all this adversity, why was he taken, right? I open the paper in the morning and I see the crazy stuff that's going on in the world. Paul alluded to it, earlier, right? There's just so much toxicity out there. There are wars and there's all this stuff. And faith, almost by its very definition, is a difficult thing, right? Faith is a strong belief in something that you can't prove, right? That in itself sort of creates a duality and a conflict. And every day, I tell you, this journey of faith that I've been on since Gunner's death, I have walked every single day with doubt right here by my side. And that bothered me, right? I kept asking myself, why can't I just believe? Why can't my faith be stronger? And I thought that I was sort of missing something. But what I found is that as I have asked the hard questions, and as I've had conversations with good friends of mine and religious leaders, and I've read more books and stuff, my faith hasn't eroded as I've done that. My faith has actually gotten stronger. And when I'm going out and I'm having these conversations with these kids on college campuses and things, I'm encouraging them to ask those difficult questions, right? To not just take this thing blindly, but if you have questions, to ask those questions and find those answers, because I think your faith grows when you do that. The other thing that makes faith very difficult is the war on our happiness, or the war on our faith, and again, Paul alluded to this in some of his earlier comments, but I describe this when I'm doing these Gunner Project conversations with the kids as this: we all have something inside of us, right? Whether you call that your conscience or your spirit or whatever, but it's a little tiny voice inside us all that always knows exactly what we should do, right? And if we take just a moment and we step back and we ask the voice inside of us, should I do this or should I do that? The little voice inside you always knows exactly what you should do, right? Even for little decisions that we have over the course of a day, should I buy that brand new shirt or should I not buy the shirt? Well, I can probably get away with not having the shirt. And that little voice is talking to us all the time, right? It's inside of us. The problem with a little voice is, it's just that. It's a little voice. Your conscious, this little voice inside of you isn't screaming at you and barking at you all day. It's a little tiny voice. And on the other side of the little voice is something that I've called the matrix. And the matrix is all of this other noise that we're getting hammered with every single day, right? Every time you turn on TV, every time you turn on the radio, every time you open up a web browser, there's this noise out there that's telling us that we're too fat, or we don't make enough money, or we don't have a cool enough car, or we need cooler jeans, right? And this noise is out there all the time, and the news industry is part of this noise, right? It's this toxicity that you see everywhere. You open up the paper and you see the wars and the porn and the death and the violence and all this different stuff, and this is just noise. And there's millions and millions and millions of dollars that are spent every single day to try to convince us of this stuff, right? And this stuff doesn't enhance it. It's sort of chipping away at the goodness that we feel in our hearts, right? The goodness that we know that there's tons of other stuff out there that's happening every single day that's good, but you pick up a paper nowadays and try to find those good things, it's hard. We've got to search pretty hard for it, right? And that's chipping away and making this whole idea of our faith and connecting with our faith on a daily basis, it's making that more difficult. I know for me, I try to, and I feel the most connected with my faith when I take this faith journey and I bring it back to right now, right? Part of the matrix wants me to get out of my moment right now, and the matrix wants me to think about things from yesterday on Facebook and on Instagram. And the matrix wants me to think about, the good thing that I'm going to do, or the party or the gathering that I'm going to do a couple of weeks from now, when right now is really the moment when I can experience happiness and I can really live my faith. It's right now that really makes the difference. We were fortunate, Julie mentioned, Richard Leiter, who spoke here a month ago, just a fantastic, just an awesome presentation. And he concluded his presentation by challenging everybody and sort of talking about a few skills that he feels are really important to develop. And one of those is a morning moment. And it's a message that I try to give all the kids when we do a Gunner Project event. And the idea is, instead of just starting your day and just randomly bumping into things that make you happy, or randomly bumping into things that would be reflective of your faith, what Richard Leiter says is you should intentionally just take a few moments and intentionally try to plan your day so that you find these things that make you happy, right? Actually strategize on how you're going to find your purpose. And for me personally, I'll tell you that recently I've tried to connect with 3 different things in my morning moment, and I've tried to make this a part of every moment that I do. But I try every morning when I'm brushing my teeth, I'm trying to create the habit of gratitude. I'm just humbly gratitude for all of the great things that I have in my life right now. I've got a wonderful family. I have wonderful coworkers and a business that I work in. And my goal is to, every morning when I'm brushing my teeth, just taking that 2 minutes that I brush my teeth, to think about 3 things that I'm grateful for in my life. And my goal is to do this often enough, to do this, the experts say 60 to 90 days, so that I create this habit that every single morning when I'm brushing my teeth for the rest of my life, I'm going to think of a couple of things that I'm grateful for. Okay, and starting my day off with that, starting my day off with just a humble thanks for all the things that I have is just an awesome way for me to start my day. Another thing that I'm doing as part of my morning moment is I'm trying to add kindness to my day. Okay, and I'm doing this through the drive that I take to work. Typically, for years and years and years, I would wake up a little bit late, and I was sort of that guy when I would drive in, right? If you were trying to come in off the ramp, I would make sure that I got up, 6 inches from the guy ahead of me, and I just scowl at you, when you were trying to get in, right? I was always that guy, and I tell you what, I would work myself into just a frenzy by the time I got to work. I was so crabby and I was so upset, it was crazy, right? What I've tried to do now is I try to just give myself a little bit of extra time in the morning, and I actually try to be kind on my way to work. I try to let people in, I wave, hey, how you doing? And it's amazing how this has impacted not just my drive to work, but the rest of my day. By me starting my day off thinking about being grateful, and by me starting my day off just being kind, I've almost invited more of this into the day as I've gone through. I'm just realizing more moments that I can be kind and I can find that. And science has shown, right, that when we're grateful, they can wire us up now, and they can see that when you are grateful or when you think about the things that you're happy for, you actually get a little release of chemicals in your brain that actually make you happy, right? And this is all completely under my control. Right? The other thing that I try to do every day is I try to find opportunities to be compassionate. Right? I work with 40 awesome people, but it seems like somebody in my office every day has something going on. And if I am aware of that in my morning moment, if I'm actually looking for those opportunities, I kind of can find those things where they need a helping hand, or they need somebody to lean on a little bit. Right? And I find these moments of compassion, through the day. Richard Leiter also talked about a reflective moment, and this is another thing that I think is just critically important, and I've tried to work this into my life also, and that is when my head hits the pillow at night, instead of me just falling to sleep or thinking about the crazy stuff that happened in my day, I try to think back on my day and see what are the cool things that happened, right? What are the things that I could do again tomorrow? Or what are the things that I did today that just made me crabby, right? And is there any way that I can avoid those things? But by me just taking and reflecting back on the day a little bit, it's very easy for me to sort of set myself up for a positive day the next day, right? A way for me to go out again and live my faith and really be there with that. One of the things that I ran into as I was getting ready for this, I was talking to a Buddhist person about their faith. And they told me, and I just think this concept is brilliant, and I've been reflecting on this for the past couple of weeks. And the idea that they had was they want to try to leave the day in a better place than it was before they started. And it's amazing, right? If I'm kind and I show gratitude and I show compassion, I can actually feel like at the end of the day that I've added more to the day than I've taken away from it. And that's a really, really cool feeling for me at the end of the day. So I want to leave you with one last thing. Dr. Joseph Lee is the medical director out at Hazelden. He was one of the people who worked with Gunnar, and he wrote just an unbelievably cool letter that we read at Gunnar's memorial service, and I want to read just a little bit of that. It says, "Gunnar was a special soul. He had a rare gift, an ability so uncommon that it must be what people mean when they reference the term magical. The ability to ascertain both the profound and the innocent in life all at once without compromising either is an enviable quality. It is a kind of perspective most of us lose early in childhood, a perspective so honest and therefore so seemingly incredulous that upon crossing paths with Gunnar, we are all left with a strong belief that our fateful encounter with this kind soul must be a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And so it was. Thank you.